After a longer break, I decided to return to the Atacama Desert and explore this area more closely. The Atacama, as you know, covers a large area of Chile on the South American continent. This area is located here, and notice this undulation that forms the Andes Mountains and practically lines the entire western coast of the South American continent, where it disappears in the north. This deformation very likely occurred during a global cataclysm that Plato also mentions. I mentioned in a video that the North American and South American continents were one. Today, however, this territory is practically broken up and deformed. And the global flood has also played its part in changing the shape of these continents. Plato mentions that the Atlantic island, that is, the continent, was torn apart, and the sea became impassable due to the swamps that were created. This applies to the Gulf of Mexico area all the way to the coast of the South American continent. As you know, in Panama, a canal was built in these swamps under very difficult conditions. This whole area from Florida, the Gulf of Mexico all the way down to Panama is swampy. But let's look at the details of the Atacama Desert. This whole area is geologically very interesting. As you can see, I have marked the incriminated areas, and these are mostly areas where mining activity is taking place. Chile is the country that produces the most lithium in the world, and not just lithium but other minerals as well. Let's try to start from the lower number and go through everything one by one. You can search for these places yourself on Google Earth. But again, I remind you that you need to work with a timeline. This means that you need to download the Google Earth application to your computer, because you won't see the details in the online version. All the areas you will see are close to the coast. What is further east, because the map is rotated, are lakes and salt pans. Almost every salt pan has mining companies working in it. So we'll start the tour here with the lower numbers. Here's the first interesting shot, and note the many lines in the area. I believe that it is a trace of a lost truss structure, but in this case it is badly torn and deformed. Here it is preserved in somewhat better condition. We can see the earth truss structure well on the Nazca Plain. It is a structure that is commonly used today, for example, in construction. We can also consider a spider's web as a truss structure. These strange limestone formations appear in these traces of the truss construction. We will see similar images in better quality. Here I wanted to show you how the limestone hills are being removed. This whole formation was originally a hill. I'll try another shot. Here you can see how they are gradually destroying this hill. There are some pretty interesting things happening around these hills. A limestone hill is being removed, and geometric shapes in the rock appear beneath it and in the surrounding area. These geometric lines are part of the stone that is found under the hills and in the surrounding area. You can clearly see that there is something embedded in the stone. As you can see, there are many paths and what looks like limestone craters. But there are some light-colored blocks in the rock here. Could these be the foundations of buildings? Let's look at another area. Here you see another hill removed. The picture is unfortunately of somewhat poor quality. A better quality image is not available. But what I wanted to say is that after removing the top layer of sediment and deposits, lighter geometric shapes start to appear. I believe that these may be the preserved foundations of ancient buildings, and we will see further clues that this may indeed be the case. In some cases, it seems that the remains of the walls have been preserved, but it is very difficult to judge. In many places, it looks as if new constructions have grown on these blocks. What is the reason for this? Maybe they wanted to cover these areas, but I strongly suspect that many American cities were built in this way. That is, building cities on the foundations of prehistoric cities using the original roads. But we have already seen this here in old videos. Something resembling sarcophagi appears here. You can clearly see how the area is being cleared, and the surrounding rock looks like it has been broken out. These geometric objects are often found in areas where this strange rock structure can be seen. For example, it is very clear here. There are quite a number of these sarcophagi, or whatever you want to call them. In addition, there are also pools. In some places, after the sediments have been excavated, parts of the truss structure appear and there is water under the whole area. Similar areas are vast and are not only found in the Atacama Desert. I'll try to change the picture. Parallel lines connect to these formations. These are again traces of the truss construction. Some still retain their original shape and resemble a spider's web. Others, however, are distorted and in some areas completely missing. Let's take a look at another area. Here I want to show you something that is appearing all over the world, and these are the so-called pools. We can see the grid that forms the dikes. In fact, this is a fairly well-preserved part of the truss structure. The pools are still covered by sediment. Let's look back a few years. Unfortunately, I sometimes suspect that the images on the timeline do not correspond to the time sequence. This is probably the best place to see it. As you can see, there are a lot of lighter lines around the pools. In the upper part of the picture, the pools are still covered. These pools are already uncovered and groundwater is emerging. There are other smaller pools to the left, but these are still fragments of the truss structure. We move a few kilometers north and see another disappearing hill. Let's see what's below and beside it. These are sort of structures of regular geometric shape, which are lighter in color than the surrounding area. Again, we see something that resembles the remains of the foundations of the houses. And on the right of the image we see only shadows. Here is another structure. It's really very difficult to tell if this is the ruins of a perimeter wall. It would be absolutely fantastic if something like this could be preserved. But if it was covered with limestone, as the Bible mentions, the limestone preserved these remains well. There is certainly something hidden in this area too. And here too. If this area is cleaned of sediments, other structures in the stone will probably appear. In the surrounding area there are some kind of limestone craters or mounds. Let's move on. I will only select the most interesting areas due to the large number of finds. Here is another disappearing hill, and there are other strange structures in its vicinity as well. Only a shadow is visible at the bottom, probably due to the rising groundwater. At the top, another structure is already visible and the outline of another structure is visible on the left. There is something bigger embedded in the rock here. Here are the kind of blocks that we saw in the previous areas. These are light-colored rectangular structures, but it is difficult to determine whether these are building foundations. Again, there are limestone craters or mounds in the vicinity. There are twisted lines in the rock. These may be the original roads, but they may also be the ruins of a truss structure. Some end abruptly in strange limestone structures. Let's move on to the next area. The image is sharp, and again notice the disappearing hill on the left. It was the same hill that we see on the right. These hills stand out in the landscape, but this one is huge. Similar hills gradually disappear from the landscape. We look at the smaller hill and notice the many lines that appear here. This place is also interesting. Note the rock structure in the area, which is certainly hiding something. The area near the hill, or where part of the hill has been removed, is already exposed. We look at some structures embedded in the rock, and at the top we notice that the formations, which are perpendicular, actually resemble the ruins of walls. In the middle there are two dark circles. Maybe it is a square or a roundabout, but we will also see two other places where the geometry of a square or a park has been preserved in very good condition. Here you can see in detail how the mining equipment bites into the hill. It is strange where they dispose of such a large amount of mined rock. Notice how the white paint shines through and the regular outlines are visible. At the bottom, this structure is still partially obscured by the rock. Let's go to the next slide. Here again, the pools appear. They are sediments that have been removed, and what forms the dams cannot be removed. It is part of the truss structure. By the way, the Atacama is the driest area in the world, and yet there is a lot of water under the surface. But let's look up, where there are a number of what look like sarcophagi. I don't know exactly what they are, but these formations do resemble sarcophagi, and there are traces of rock extraction. Some parts look like they've been broken out. There will be something hidden here too. There are many paths, some leading nowhere. But many of them certainly come from lorry wheels. But not all of them. Here is an example of a main road that is being used. But the branch roads end in the surrounding rock and go no further. They are twisted and there are many of them. There are probably some probes being conducted at this site. It is interesting that almost every sarcophagus has some kind of circular well. They seem too large for test drillings. It is also worth noting the structure of the sarcophagi. The limestone seems to have been placed here, and I use the word placed deliberately, in a very special formation. As for the limestone hills in other parts of the world, they seem to be made up of cones of different colors, like some of the colored mountains in China and elsewhere. It is clearly visible in detail and looks very plastic. Here again the pools appear. It is possible that these sarcophagi cover the voids in the truss structure and that water appears when they are removed. In some areas, raw materials have been mined for a very long time, but images from 10 or 20 years ago are not available. This is the situation in 2011 and the pools are just beginning to be uncovered. In 2010 there is nothing here, or the image is edited, as it often is. And here is another disappearing hill. Pretty much everywhere, on every hill, we find the same picture. We are looking again at some structures that have become part of the rock. And another circular structure that could have been a roundabout, for example. In this case, I have no idea what it is. It's like there are giant rivets, but it's gotta be something else. Here's a close-up of the mining machines extracting the rock from the hill. The surroundings are blackened, but the outlines of the objects are still visible. We are in 2016 in a different area and it looks like a probing on the right side. It would be costly to operate mining in areas where it is not worthwhile. In the left part of the image we see again a strange rock structure. There is definitely something hidden in this area. And notice that part of this area is still covered by rock that was once liquid and overflowed over this area. We will now be mainly interested in this area. We move back in time and this structure appears. It has an unusual shape and is another small piece in the puzzle of Earth's truss structure. It reveals pools. This structure appears to be crossed by a water channel, but this appears to be under the truss structure. In the upper part of the picture we see again something like sarcophagi. This oval structure is probably connected to another structure that has not yet been cleared. It may be a twin. The water canal connects to the line on the left, which now serves as a road. You can see in detail how the area is being cleaned. The green structures along the channel look very sculptural and are found in many places on Earth, including the seabed in shallow areas. And here is proof that many areas on Earth affected by the cataclysm were literally flooded with liquid limestone that was burned by an unknown heat source. And this limestone preserved everything perfectly. This is an example of liquid rock, streams pouring over each other. And swimming pools appear here again. Here you can see how the work is progressing, and I am personally looking forward to what will appear here. The width of what they are looking for would match the width of the oval structure on the right. But let's be surprised. It is therefore clear that the oval structure is connected to another structure which may have the same shape in the end. More interestingly, I suspect that this shape of structure is in the area of the so-called Baltic anomaly. So this structure may have collapsed as a result of the continental breakup and other catastrophes. Let's take a look at the photo. This is a sonar image from the area of the so-called Baltic anomaly. We can see two submerged oval-shaped objects. The upper one is more visible. It also appears to be in much better condition than the lower object. The shape is strikingly similar to the oval truss structure in the Atacama Desert. However, this structure is not the only one in the Atacama Desert, but it is found in other areas as well as circular structures. It is important to note the age of these structures and the fact that they lie beneath high deposits of sediment. Let's look at the last few areas. I figured it would be better to split this topic into several parts, because these areas are definitely worth looking at. You can stop the video at any time. Look at the coordinates on the bar at the bottom right, and look at the area on Google Earth. At the top of this image, it appears that a circular truss structure has been discovered. It is likely that mining will not take place here for some time. Or it is possible that mining is not worthwhile. A solar panel complex has been constructed here. This area is also very interesting. I'll set up an older image. Here it is clearly visible, and again it is a hill that is being removed and water is appearing. It appears as if the water table is underneath a whole large area of desert. These are again pools that are bounded by a truss structure. Some of them are still waiting to be cleaned. Fragments of the truss structure can be seen in the bottom of the picture. This is one of the larger pools. You can see the remains of the structure in detail. These remnants of the structure are still visible in the rock. Here we see a stump structure like in many similar pools and sinkholes around the world. This means that parts of the structure have been cut away. Around the pool and the hill there is a large area with a strange structure in the rock. It is possible that we are looking at the remains of a very old settlement. When we zoom in, we see a large number of roads crossing, branching, as if they were traffic routes. Of course, all this is very damaged, deformed. In places the area is still covered by rock. In the lower part this area disappears again under the limestone and reappears. Notice how the paths are connected to each other. Some branches disappear under the rock again. Let's look at another area. Again, we see a strange rock structure and it doesn't look natural. In the middle of this area, there is something that looks like a city. Each of these mining areas has its own name. Let's take a look at what's being discovered here. Although the image is not very sharp, we can clearly see other bright geometric formations in the rock. Something that could be a square or a park is emerging. In the left part we can see a cleared football field, which is badly damaged. It resembles a shadow. To the left of the field, we see light blocks again. It is possible that a new city will be built here. Work is still underway here to remove the hill. Unfortunately, it's hard to see. Different location and still the same pools. The pools also seem to have traces of thinner trusses. Let's try to go back in time, because this picture is overexposed. Here you can see the process of cleaning the pools and also traces of the internal trusses. Next to the pools, more calcareous sediment is being cleared away, and note the white color. White limestone is probably the most common, but other colors are also found, such as the red color seen in Egypt. There is again a strange rock structure in the surroundings that resembles a very old settlement. If you look closely at these formations, they appear to have been created by a multitude of small mounds. And other pools. There is probably another pool hidden on the left side. I'll end the video for now. We'll cover the other areas in another episode or two, and then we'll get back to the metal pipes in Baigong. I promised you over a year ago that I'd rework the video with a voiceover, and there's a lot to explore. Enjoy!